Hey everyone, so I don't know if it's just me, but I got to thinking that wouldn't it be really cool to see if we can actually drive this? So last time we did get the engine running in this thing. Now that's not all good and done, the engine is running terrible, but it is running, so it should be good enough to test the rest of it. Because really the engine is just, for the most part, a pretty standard Mercedes engine. But what really makes a Unimog is the drivetrain. It's the gearbox and the axles with the suspension. So it would be really nice to know if that stuff actually works. And honestly, it would only take a few little things to actually try and see if this thing will move. So first off, we have to get a cooling system on this. So I gotta put the radiator back in and get the water pump running so we can run this thing for more than just a few seconds without burning it all down. And we gotta get some fuel for it, so I'm just gonna put a can inside the cab and just run some hoses out here. And then we have to get this clutch working, because right now it's not connected at all. But it does look like the cylinder is actually fairly new, or at least it's newer than everything else down here. It's just never been hooked up, so I just gotta run a line to this and see if we can get it to move. And then I just gotta do a few quick checks to make sure there is actually some oil in the axles and the transmission. And lastly, I have to do something about these exhaust leaks because I do have neighbors, so I'm just gonna do some really quick and crude weldings on this and the muffler back there, just to try and bring the noise down to a more humane level. So let's get this inside and see if we can actually get some of that stuff to work. Alright, so turns out half the job was just to get it backed in here. Because these are surprisingly heavy when they can't move themselves. Even had to hook up like a ratcheting pulley thing and anchor it to the old Ford just to get it over this little step right here. Anyway, let's start by hooking that cooling system back up. Now I should have everything that they've taken off it right here. I do have the radiator and a lot of the hoses and stuff. But if there is something that I need, then conveniently I still have the other one completely disassembled, so if there's something I need, I can just borrow it from that. Okay, so, well, I gotta get this mounted back up proper, because that goes on the same mount as the cooling reservoir. And actually, I don't... oh. That does turn nicely. And alternator. Wow. Okay, no. That's completely locked up. Well, that's a bit of a shame. It's not that I actually need it to charge, but the alternator does serve as the tensioning pulley for the belt that goes around and drives the water pump. So we're gonna have to see if we can free that up or figure something else out. Let's see if we can free this up. Yeah! Well, that just took a little bit of persuasion. Look at how nicely that spins now. And it doesn't even sound terrible, so that might not even be annoying. Nice! we go. There was actually 2 of these in that stack of parts that I got, but this was the nicer looking one. I feel like I've been filming myself taking radiators in and out of these so many times by now. Great, so now we have some cooling on it. A lot of debris floated to the top in here, so I don't think there's been water in this for a really long time, but it's all full to the brim now. It doesn't look like it's leaking anywhere. All this water here, that's just me spilling everywhere. Now I found out that I don't actually have this little pin that goes out to support the top part of the radiator, but it is bolted down in the bottom, and just these hoses alone actually keeps it reasonably in place. And I mean, it's not like it's gonna hit the fan, so we're just gonna call that good for what we're doing here. Alright, so now let's take a look at that clutch and see if we can get this working. Some of it is still there, but it's disconnected down here, if I can see it, down there at the end of that hose. So I gotta run a line from here and back to the cylinder down by the clutch. Wait a minute. I almost did it. There we go. Right now it's actually pretty convenient that they raised the cap up like they did. Otherwise this piece actually gets in the way of this. It's also pretty convenient that this whole cover for the gear levers are missing, because now I can easily reach this bleeding screw down here while pumping it. Right, well that did nothing. I guess I was being a little optimistic, hoping it would be that easy. So let's just see what's going on up here. Yeah, well that looks pretty dry in there. The pedal is also very loose, so I'm starting to suspect that the little piston in here is probably stuck. And still nothing. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's stuck in there, so let's take that cylinder apart. Yeah, well, it's not pretty. There we go. Ew. That's not nice. Well, it did not have any fluid in it, so it's probably been sitting without any for quite a while, so it's completely clogged up with all kinds of debris in here. Okay, so unfortunately, I don't think this is going to work. I've been trying for a while to get this piston out of here, but it's been pushed all the way to the back. I'm guessing that at some point while this truck was sitting, someone was inside pushing on that clutch, and they just pushed this piston all the way to the back, and it's just been corroded in place back there because there was no fluid in it, so it's just been open to the air up here. And the only access to get to this from the back is through this tiny hole back there. I have been trying with a little punch to see if I could force it back out, but I can feel that I'm just pushing it into some, I think, rubber and probably into the aluminium of the piston itself. So even if I do get it out, it's probably going to be ruined. So I'm not going to waste any more time on this. We're just going to borrow it from the other Mog and get going. I was gonna have to get this off here pretty soon anyway. Alright, well, we're already getting something through this one, but I already kind of knew that this one would work. Okay, let's try this again. Already feels different. We're already getting a little bit of movement. Nice. Oh yeah. Yeah. Alright, so now we should have a functioning clutch, or at least the pedal and the hydraulics for it. But the clutch plate itself might be rusted in place. I won't really know that till we start driving. So now I just gotta hook up a fuel line. I'll hook it up to the inlet here and just pull it into the cab where I can hook it up to a can. And I also just realized that I need to hook up the linkage for the pedal and the hand throttle. This is not very smooth, but it works, sort of. That's good enough. Alright, so before we try and get going, I'm just gonna have to do something about the exhaust, because when we fired this up the last time, it was just really loud, and it is pretty much just straight piped right now, and that's just obnoxious. So, well, I'm not going to be doing anything pretty or durable or anything. I just want to close this thing up, so I'm just going to wrap some steel around this and weld it up as well as I can. Same with the manifold over here that has this really nice big hole in it. I'm just going to clean all this up and cut a little piece of metal to put in here and just weld it all back together. Now this is cast iron, so it's not going to hold for a really long time, but I don't need it to. And this manifold is ruined anyway, so I don't mind doing that. Alright, well, none of this is very pretty, and it's not gonna last very long, I know, but that's not really the point. This was just to keep the sound down. Now, it's not perfect. There's still a lot of holes because it's very rusty, and I couldn't get in there and weld all the way around, but it's much better than it was, so hopefully that will help the sound quite a bit. So, yeah, let's give it some fuel and a battery and see what happens. Let's just hope this floor will even hold it. Yeah, that'll work. A couple of good old zip ties should do the trick. Perfectly safe. Alright, so I think that just about does it. We're about ready to see if we can get this thing going. Now, I was underneath just checking all the axles and gearboxes, pulling the fill plugs and making sure there was oil in there and just filling them up as needed, just to make sure that everything had some lubricant. I just didn't film a whole lot of that because it's pretty awkward to get the camera down there with me. So yeah, let's go ahead and see if this thing will actually fire up again. Now, I already know the engine is going to be running terrible, and it's probably going to fill this room with smoke pretty quick. But I'm not really super concerned with that right now because I already know the engine is going to need either to be overhauled or just completely replaced. This is all about seeing if the driveline actually works, so let's give it a try. Well, it's actually pretty awkward getting in here because the step is missing. So I'm gonna give the glow plugs a few seconds and then we're just gonna try this. Alright, let's give it a go. Nice. So it does move, so the clutch works. It does seem to be stuck in its extra low range, however, so I'm just gonna try to see if I can get that lever to move and see if we can test out the high range as well. So with this rear lever here, that turns this rod here that goes all the way to the bottom, and that's what selects the extra low range gears. But it was kind of stuck in between gears, and I did manage to pry it over and get this rod here to turn back. So now it's in extra low range, but it's kind of stuck there, so I'm gonna have to see if I can free this up and get it moved forward again. And also this lever, that is for forward and reverse, but it's colliding with this, so I can't really get it to go into reverse now. So I'm just gonna have to see if I can get this to move again. Yeah, there we go. I think we got it. Now we can go into reverse as well. All right, let's see if it does have a high range now. Well, I can switch this into high gear, so that's promising. All right, let's try it out. I shut it off again because it's so loud in here, but it does seem that the high range works. That is super nice. Now I did only get it up into second gear because the whole thing is just jerking so much from the engine running so bad, but I have no reason to think that third and fourth won't be working as well. So actually I was thinking, let's try and see if we can get it back into that low range crawl gear, and just to see how slow this thing can actually go. So we get the main gears into low range, first gear, and then we go forward on that one, and come on, yeah, it is moving. Yeah, I think we got it. That is really stiff, but I think it worked. Let's try this out. That is really slow. It might die out, but that's a really slow crawl gear right there. So I was thinking, now that we have it in that extra low range crawl gear, let's test out the four-wheel drive and see if it'll drive through this hole right here. So to get it into four-wheel drive, I got this lever right here that I gotta put there. This is the same lever you use to activate the diff locks. If you move it back one more position, it's gonna activate this little air cylinder down here and lock the front and rear differentials. That's obviously not going to work because none of it is hooked up, and neither is the compressor, so we don't even have any air. Alright, so I actually got this thing running under its own power. Who would have thought? But that engine, it needs some serious attention or a replacement, because right now this thing is kind of a death machine, because that engine is just spewing so many gases into the cabin that even with those windows missing, it's just really unpleasant to be in there and really unhealthy as well. So I'm not going to be driving it anymore right now. But I did get to test out what I really wanted, and that was to see if the driveline was alright. And even though I couldn't test the diff locks, other than that, the axles seemed to be just fine. And the same goes for the gearboxes. The biggest thing is that some of the levers in here are kind of stuck, so I'm gonna have to work some of that loose, but it does seem that everything is working and it isn't making any strange noises, so I'm really happy with that. But now that we know that this thing might actually be worth putting a little more serious effort into, that brings the question of what we should actually do with this. Because bringing this back to near original condition, kind of like the other Unimog that I'm doing, is just gonna be a massive job. There are so many little things on this that are either broken or missing or have been modified or altered in some way. So fixing all of that up and buying all those new parts, it's just going to cost a whole lot of money and a whole lot of time, and I'm not really looking to spend that on this one. So what I'm thinking right now is that this would actually make a really cool off-road rig. Because if we're going to spend a lot of energy on this anyway, we may as well upgrade it and make it cooler in the process. Because there's a bunch of things that we can do to make this thing even better. And also this, well, naturally being a Unimog, it's already really good, but this one has that extra low range crawler gears, which is actually pretty rare. Now, because if we don't have to keep this original Unimog all the way around, we could go in and get creative with that engine, since we're gonna have to do something about it anyway. We could be putting some much more gnarly tires on this thing, putting winches front and rear. We could even put a separate PTO driven hydraulic system if we want hydraulic winches. We could also put electric compressors so the engine doesn't have to struggle with that. We could put full roll cages on the cabin. That would actually be a really good idea, because you really don't want to roll these things without a roll cage. That's how people die in these, because these roofs, they cannot handle the weight of the rest of the vehicle. As for the cab itself, if we're not trying to stay super original, fixing this up is not going to have to be nearly as much of a pain. Or we could be doing something entirely different. We could go for more modern gauges, we could put bucket seats in this with nice harnesses, upgrade the lighting on this thing. There's just a ton of things we could do with this thing. And as usual, I love getting all your ideas and suggestions, so let me know down in the comments what are some things that you think could be really cool to do with something like this. If we're going a little less agricultural like the other one and a little more off-road. Now that's going to be it for this video, so thanks for watching and we'll see you.